The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their harsh glow making my skin look sickly pale. My fingers trembled as I counted the bills in my wallet for the third time. $7.32, not nearly enough for everything in my basket. The formula alone was $24, and Mia had been crying all night with hunger. I placed the milk back on the shelf, my hand lingering on the cold carton, a simple luxury I couldn't afford. "Ma'am, are you checking out?" The cashier's impatient voice cut through my thoughts. The line behind me had grown, and I could feel the weight of annoyance from the other customers pressing against my back. "Just the formula, please." My voice was barely a whisper. I handed over the WIC voucher, praying it would still be valid. The cashier scanned it, her expression unchanging, and bagged the formula without a word. I stepped out into the cold December air, clutching the paper bag to my chest like a shield. My apartment was 15 blocks away, but I couldn't afford the bus fare. Every penny had to go to Mia. The wind whipped through my thin jacket, and I pulled it tighter around my body, though it did little to keep out the chill. 3 jobs and still not enough. The daycare during the day, waitressing in the evening, and online data entry deep into the night while Mia slept. Sleep had become a distant memory, a luxury I couldn't afford, like the milk I'd left behind. I was halfway home when the world began to tilt. The streetlights blurred into streaks of gold against the darkening sky. I leaned against a storefront window, trying to steady myself, but my legs gave way beneath me. The last thing I remembered was the cold pavement against my cheek, and a pair of polished black shoes stepping into my fading vision. "Get her in the car." The voice was deep, commanding. It cut through the fog in my mind, but I couldn't open my eyes. My body felt weightless, cradled against something warm and solid. The scent of expensive cologne, sandalwood and something darker, filled my senses. "Sir, she could be a junkie." Another voice, deferential. "Does she look like a junkie to you?" The first voice again, sharp with irritation. "Check her bag." I wanted to protest, to reach for the formula, but my arms wouldn't move. I felt myself being lowered onto leather seats, the surface cool against my burning skin. Just formula and a receipt for milk she didn't buy. The confusion in the second man's voice was evident, and a phone with 50 missed calls from work. A moment of silence followed. I felt fingertips against my wrist, checking my pulse. "Take us to Dr. Vega, now." The car lurched forward and I slipped back into darkness. I woke to the sound of steady beeping. My eyes fluttered open to a room I didn't recognize. Cream walls, tasteful artwork, a window overlooking city lights. Not a hospital, but some kind of private medical suite. An IV was attached to my arm, the clear liquid dripping steadily. "You're severely dehydrated and malnourished." A man's voice came from the shadows by the window. He stepped forward into the soft lamplight, and my breath caught in my throat. He was tall, imposing in a perfectly tailored black suit that did nothing to hide the power in his shoulders and chest. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on ancient coins. All sharp angles and authority, but it was his eyes that held me captive. Dark as midnight, watching me with an intensity that made me want to disappear into the sheets. "Where am I?" My voice cracked. "I need to get home. My daughter is being taken care of." He moved closer, and I instinctively pressed back against the pillows. "My men found a 6-month-old in your apartment. She's with a pediatrician now." Fear shot through me, more potent than any medicine in the IV. "You took my baby? Who are you? I need to see her now." I tried to sit up, to pull out the IV, but his hand caught my wrist, gentle but unyielding. "Lie down before you collapse again." It wasn't a request. "Your daughter is fine. Better than she was, in fact. She was hungry." Shame burned through me, hotter than the fever I'd apparently been fighting. "I was bringing her formula home. If your men hadn't kidnapped me, if my men hadn't found you, you'd still be unconscious on the sidewalk, and your daughter would be alone in that freezing apartment." His voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it that made me fall silent. "The pediatrician says she's underweight." The accusation hung in the air between us. I turned my face away, unable to bear the judgment in his gaze. "I'm doing the best I can," I whispered. He said nothing for a long moment, and I heard him moving around the room. Then something light landed on the bed beside me, a crumpled receipt. You put back the milk. It wasn't a question. You could afford either formula for your daughter or food for yourself. You chose her. I looked up at him, confused by the strange note in his voice. It almost sounded like respect. Any mother would do the same. I reached for the receipt, needing something to do with my hands. I don't understand. Why am I here? Who are you? He moved to stand at the foot of the bed, hands in the pockets of his tailored slacks. The gesture should have seemed casual, but nothing about this man was casual. My name is Dante Rossi. He said it simply, as though I should recognize it. When I didn't react, a flicker of surprise crossed his face. You really don't know who I am, do you? I shook my head, growing increasingly uncomfortable under his scrutiny. Good. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You fainted outside one of my businesses. I don't make a habit of rescuing women from the sidewalk. But you... He paused, his eyes tracing over my face in a way that made my skin warm. You looked like you needed help. And I was right. I don't need charity. The words came automatically, pride rising even through my exhaustion. That almost smile appeared again. No. What you need is rest, food, and to stop working yourself to death. He glanced at his watch, an elegant timepiece that probably cost more than my yearly rent. When was the last time you slept more than 2 hours? I tried to remember, but the days had blurred together. I don't know. A week ago, maybe? His jaw tightened. And eaten a full meal? The IV dripped steadily in the silence that followed my lack of answer. As I thought. He moved toward the door. Sleep. We'll talk more when you're stronger. Your daughter will be brought to you in the morning. Wait! I called out, panic rising. I can't stay here. I have jobs. 3 of them. If I miss a shift, I'll be fired. I can't afford... Your employers have been informed that you've had a medical emergency. His tone left no room for argument. Your positions will be waiting for you when you're recovered. How did you... But I already knew. Men like him. Men who commanded rooms without raising their voice, who wore suits that cost more than cars, who had private doctors on call. They had power. The kind of power that made things happen. Sleep, Lily. He used my name for the first time, and it felt intimate somehow, as though he'd reached out and touched me. How do you know my name? I whispered. He paused at the door. I know everything about you now. Lily Harrison, 24 years old. Single mother to Mia, 6 months. No family to speak of, 3 jobs, and an apartment that should be condemned. His eyes held mine. The question is, what don't I know? The door closed behind him before I could answer, leaving me alone with the beeping monitors and the unsettling feeling that my life had just taken a sharp, irreversible turn. I must have fallen asleep, because when I opened my eyes again, sunlight was streaming through the windows. For a moment, I forgot where I was, reaching instinctively for Mia's crib beside my bed, but my hand found only air. Reality crashed back, and I sat up with a gasp. Easy. A woman's voice came from beside the bed. She was middle-aged, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, dressed in what looked like a nurse's uniform. Mr. Rossi said you'd panic about your baby first thing. She's fine. She nodded toward the corner of the room. There, in an elegant white crib that must have cost a fortune, lay Mia, sleeping peacefully. Her cheeks looked fuller than I remembered, her color better. Clean and dressed in new clothes, not the threadbare onesie I'd been washing by hand each night. She's been fed and changed, the nurse said, checking my IV. Doctor says your blood work shows severe anemia and the early stages of malnutrition. You need to rest and rebuild your strength. I need to get back to work, I said, though my body betrayed me, sinking back against the pillows in exhaustion. I can't afford... Mr. Rossi has taken care of everything. She said it matter-of-factly, as though powerful men regularly swept in to rescue fainting women and their babies. Your rent has been paid for the next 3 months, and there's a grocery delivery scheduled for when you return home. I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. Why would he do that? He doesn't know me. She gave me a look I couldn't interpret. Mr. Rossi does what he wants, and for whatever reason, he's decided to help you. She checked her watch. He'll be here to speak with you at noon. I suggest you eat something before then." As if on cue, another woman entered with a tray of food, not hospital fare, but a beautifully arranged breakfast of fresh fruit, yogurt, and toast with expensive-looking jam. My stomach growled embarrassingly loud at the sight. The women left me to eat, and I devoured everything on the tray, then moved carefully to the crib. Mia was still sleeping, her tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. I touched her cheek gently, feeling the softness of her skin, cleaner than it had been in weeks. I'd been boiling water on the stove to bathe her, unable to afford to keep the hot water heater running. What kind of mother couldn't provide basic necessities for her child? The shame burned in my throat as I looked around the luxurious room. Dante Rossi had done more for my daughter in one night than I had in months of working myself to exhaustion. But why? Men like him didn't do things without expecting something in return. The thought sent a chill through me despite the room's perfect temperature. I was sitting in a chair by the window, Mia cradled in my arms, when the door opened precisely at noon. Dante Rossi entered, followed by a man who stayed by the door, his posture alert despite his relaxed stance. A bodyguard, I realized. Which raised the question again, who exactly was Dante Rossi? "You look better." Dante's eyes moved from me to Mia, something softening in his expression. "The color has returned to your face." "Thank you for helping us." The words felt inadequate, but I don't understand why. He moved further into the room, and I noticed he carried a tablet. I've been asking myself the same question. His honesty surprised me. Perhaps it was the milk receipt, or perhaps... He trailed off, studying Mia with an intensity that made me hold her closer. "She looks like her father." Ice filled my veins. "How would you know that?" His eyes met mine, dark and unreadable, because I know her father. Or rather, I knew him. The room seemed to shrink around Mia tighter to my chest, her warmth the only thing keeping me anchored, as the ground shifted beneath me. "That's impossible," I whispered. But even as I said it, doubt crept in like a shadow. Jake had been vague about his work, disappearing for days sometimes with little explanation. "Who are you, really?" Dante Rossi moved to sit in the chair opposite mine, his movements fluid and controlled. The sunlight streaming through the window caught on his signet ring, a stylized R in what looked like platinum. "I told you who I am," he said simply. "But perhaps what you're really asking is what I do." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. "I control most of the shipping in and out of this city. Import, export, distribution. I have interests in real estate, nightclubs, construction." His eyes never left mine. "Some of my businesses are perfectly legal. Others operate in grayer areas." My throat went dry. "You're a criminal." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I prefer businessman with flexible interpretations of regulation." He glanced at Mia, who had begun to stir in my arms. "Jacob Mercer worked for me. He managed certain financial aspects of my operation." Jake. He was talking about Jake, who had swept into my life like a hurricane, charming and intense, promising me the world, then vanishing just as quickly when I told him I was pregnant. I had tried for months to find him, calling the number he'd given me until it was disconnected, going to the address that turned out to be a vacant lot. "Jake never mentioned you," I said, the memories bringing fresh pain. "He disappeared 7 months ago, right after I told him about the baby." Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes. "Jacob disappeared because he stole $2 million from me and tried to flee the country." The words hit me like physical blows. Jake, a thief? It didn't seem possible, but it would explain his sudden wealth toward the end of our relationship. The expensive gifts, the talk of traveling abroad. "I don't believe you," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "You don't have to." Dante's voice remained even. "The facts remain the same. Jacob stole from me, then ran. My men caught up with him in Marseille." He paused, studying my face. "He won't be returning." The implication was clear. I felt ill, but couldn't summon surprise or even proper grief. Jake had abandoned us months ago. Learning he was dead simply confirmed what I had already come to accept. He was never coming back. "I didn't know," I said, meeting Dante's gaze. "About the money, about his work for you. I knew nothing." He watched me for a long moment, as if weighing the truth of my words. "I believe you," he finally said. which is why you're here receiving medical care instead of experiencing more unpleasant consequences. A shiver ran through me. Mia began to fuss, perhaps sensing my distress. I bounced her gently, a reflexive motion that seemed to soothe her. "Is that why you helped us? To determine if I was involved with Jake's theft?" I asked, trying to understand the dangerous situation I found myself in. Dante leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed, but his eyes still watchful. "Initially, yes. When my men found your ID, the name Harrison didn't register. But then I saw her." He nodded toward Mia. "The resemblance to Jacob was striking. I needed to know if you were his accomplice or another one of his victims." "And now that you know?" He smiled, a gesture that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Now I find myself in an unexpected position." He set the tablet on the table between us, turning it to face me. On the screen was a bank account with my name on it, showing a balance that made my eyes widen. "This is for Mia, a trust fund that will provide for her education and well-being." "I don't understand," I said, staring at the numbers that represented more money than I would earn in 20 years. "Jacob stole from me. That debt must be paid." His voice hardened slightly, "but he also abandoned his child. And that is unforgivable." Something personal colored his words, and I wondered briefly about the man behind the power. "Consider this restitution, not from Jacob, who had nothing honorable to give, but from me. Why would you do this for us? We're nothing to you." Dante stood, buttoning his suit jacket with an elegant flick of his wrist. "Let's just say I have strong feelings about fathers who abandon their responsibilities." He moved toward the door, then paused. "You'll both stay here until you've recovered fully. After that, we'll discuss your future." "My future?" I repeated, not liking the presumption in his tone. He turned back, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. "Did you think this would end with a trust fund and a goodbye? Mia is Jacob's daughter, which makes her my responsibility now." "She's my daughter," I said, steel entering my voice despite my vulnerable position. "And no offense, Mr. Rossi, but I don't want my child anywhere near your world." Instead of anger, amusement flickered across his features. "Brave," he murmured, almost to himself, "but misguided." "You're already in my world, Lily. You stepped into it the moment Jacob Mercer took you to dinner." He nodded toward Mia, "and she was born into it." With that, he left the room, the bodyguard following silently behind him. The door closed with a soft click that somehow seemed more final than a slam. I looked down at Mia, now awake and gazing up at me with eyes that, I now realized with a sick feeling, were remarkably similar to Dante Rossi's in color and shape. Not Jake's eyes at all. Had there been more to Jake's relationship with the crime boss than simple employment? The questions swirled in my mind, but I pushed them away. Right now, what mattered was protecting Mia and finding a way out of this gilded cage, because that's what this beautiful room was, a cage. And Dante Rossi, for all his apparent generosity, was not a man who did anything without purpose. The next 3 days passed in a strange, dreamlike state. I was moved to a larger suite with a proper bedroom for Mia and myself, a sitting area, and even a small kitchen, though all our meals were delivered by silent, efficient staff. Dr. Vega visited daily, checking my recovery and Mia's development. The nurse, whose name I learned was Elena, stayed close, helping with Mia and ensuring I ate properly and rested. I didn't see Dante again during this time, but his presence permeated everything, from the expensive baby clothes that appeared for Mia to the books on the shelves that somehow matched my reading preferences. He was watching, learning, without being physically present. On the 4th day, as I sat by the window watching the city lights come on at dusk, Elena entered with a garment bag. "Mr. Rossi requests your company for dinner," she said, hanging the bag on a hook by the closet. "He'll be here at 7. I stared at her, then at the bag. "And if I refuse?" She gave me a look that was almost pitying. "No one refuses Mr. Rossi, especially not when they're living under his roof." Living under his roof. The words hit home. I was entirely dependent on this man I barely knew, this criminal who spoke of responsibility and obligation with the conviction of scripture. With reluctance, I unzipped the bag to find a simple but elegant black dress, exactly my size. Beside it hung a cashmere shawl in deep burgundy, no jewelry. He hadn't presumed that far, but the message was clear. I was expected to play my part in whatever game he was orchestrating. At precisely 7, a knock came at the door. I had put on the dress, arranged my hair as best I could, and even applied a touch of the makeup that had appeared in the bathroom that morning. Mia was fed and sleeping soundly in her crib, with Elena promising to watch over her. I opened the door to find Dante standing there, impeccable in a charcoal suit and crisp white shirt, open at the collar. No tie. This was casual for him, I realized. "You look well," he said, his eyes moving over me in an appraising glance that wasn't quite clinical, but not quite personal either. "The dress suits you." "Thank you for the clothes," I said stiffly, though I don't understand why we need to have dinner together. "Because we have matters to discuss, and I prefer to do business over good food and wine." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" I hesitated before placing my hand lightly on his sleeve, feeling the expensive fabric and the solid strength of the arm beneath. We walked in silence down a corridor I hadn't been allowed to explore before, past doors guarded by men who nodded respectfully as Dante passed. The building, I was starting to realize, was some sort of private residence or headquarters, with the medical suite just one small part of it. We emerged into a vast open space, a penthouse living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. The lights stretched to the horizon, a carpet of diamonds under the night sky. In the center of the room stood a dining table set for 2, candles already lit, wine breathing in crystal decanters. "You live here?" I couldn't keep the awe from my voice. "One of my residences," he said casually, leading me to the table. "I prefer to keep moving. It's safer." He held my chair for me, an old-world courtesy that seemed at odds with his criminal enterprise. A waiter appeared from nowhere to pour wine and serve the first course, something delicate involving seafood that I was too nervous to fully appreciate. "You said we had business to discuss," I prompted, after we'd eaten in silence for several minutes. The wine was making me bold, or perhaps it was the growing certainty that if Dante had meant me harm, he would have acted already. He set down his fork and regarded me thoughtfully. "I've been making arrangements," he said. "A new apartment for you and Mia, in a building I own. 3 bedrooms, doorman, security. It's in a good school district." I blinked, trying to process this. "That's generous, but unnecessary. I can't afford a place like that. You won't be paying rent, and you won't be returning to any of your previous jobs." Anger flared. "You can't decide that for me. I won't be kept." Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "I'm not suggesting you become my mistress, if that's your concern. I'm offering you a position within my legitimate businesses, executive assistant at my real estate firm. The salary is substantial, the hours regular, and there's an on-site daycare for Mia." I stared at him, speechless. "Why would you do this?" He took a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving mine over the rim of the glass. "I told you. I take my responsibilities seriously." "I'm not your responsibility," I insisted. "No," he agreed. "But Mia is. And by extension, so are you." The second course arrived, perfectly seared steaks with vegetables I couldn't name, but that melted in my mouth. I ate mechanically, my mind racing. "What exactly would this position entail?" I asked finally. "Administrative duties, scheduling, some light accounting? Skills I believe you already possess from your data entry work." He cut into his steak with precise movements. "You'd report directly to me, and if I refuse?" His expression didn't change. "The trust fund remains Mia's regardless, but I would strongly advise against refusing." He set down his knife and fork. "There are people who would harm her, harm both of you, to get to me. Enemies I've made over the years. If you're under my protection, publicly acknowledged as under my care, they won't touch you. But if we just disappear, return to our old life, they'll find you." His voice was soft but certain. "Jacob's associates know about you, know about Mia. It's only a matter of time before my enemies make the connection as well." Fear coiled in my stomach. You're saying we're in danger no matter what. I'm saying you're safer with me than without me. He reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of touching mine. I don't make this offer lightly, Lily. I'm not a man who concerns himself with the welfare of strangers. But Mia, she deserves better than what Jacob left her to. I studied his face, trying to see beyond the power and control to the man beneath. And what do you get out of this arrangement? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Perhaps I'm tired of living in a world of transactions and deals. Perhaps I want something more genuine in my life. I didn't believe him. Or rather, I didn't believe that was all there was to it. But I also couldn't deny the reality of our situation. I had no money, no family, no support system. And now, apparently, we had enemies I hadn't even known existed. I'll accept the job, I said finally. And the apartment. But on one condition. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unaccustomed to conditions being placed on his offers. I want the truth, I said. All of it. About Jake, about why you're really doing this, and I hesitated, then pushed forward. About why Mia has your eyes, not Jake's. Something dangerous flashed across his face. There and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. But when he spoke, his voice was calm. The truth, he repeated, as though testing the word. Very well. After dinner, the remainder of dinner passed in tense silence. Dante seemed lost in thought, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't read. When the dessert plates were cleared away, he stood and gestured toward the balcony. Some conversations are better had in the open air, he said, holding the door for me. The night air was cool against my skin. As I stepped out onto the vast terrace, the city sprawled below us, a tapestry of lights and shadows. I felt dizzy with the height, or perhaps with the weight of what was to come. Dante moved to stand beside me at the railing, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, but not so close as to touch. For a long moment he said nothing, just gazed out at the city. His city, I realized, in more ways than was legal. Jacob Mercer was my half-brother, he said finally, the words dropping like stones into still water. I turned to stare at him, searching his face for signs of deception. There was none. Half-brother, I repeated, the pieces falling into place. The similar eyes, the way Mia looked like both Jake and Dante. He never mentioned having a brother. No, he wouldn't have. Bitterness edged his voice. Jacob spent his life denying any connection to the Rossi family. Our father wasn't exactly a model of virtue, and Jacob's mother took him away when he was young, changed his name, tried to give him a normal life. His laugh was short, humorless. But blood calls to blood. When he needed money, needed connections, he came to me. And you gave him a job, I said softly, beginning to understand. Despite everything, Dante's hands tightened on the railing. He was family. In my world, that means something. He turned to look at me, his eyes reflecting the city lights. I brought him into the business, taught him, trusted him, and in return, he stole from me and ran, leaving behind. His gaze drifted toward the door, toward the room where Mia slept, leaving behind his responsibilities. He never told me about any of this, I said, the betrayal fresh again. About you, about his family, about the stolen money. Jacob was good at compartmentalizing his life. Dante's voice was steady, but I could hear the anger beneath the control. He kept you in the dark because it was easier. When you told him about the pregnancy, he saw it as an opportunity, a reason to take the money and start fresh somewhere else. The truth was a physical pain, tightening around my chest. He never intended to take us with him. No. Dante said it gently, but without softening the blow. The tickets we found were for one person only. Marseille to Morocco to points beyond. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I'd cried enough for Jacob, already. Thank you for telling me the truth. You deserved to know. He moved closer, and I didn't step away. When I discovered you, learned about Mia, I was angry. Another mess for me to clean up. But then I saw the milk receipt. His voice softened. You put her needs above your own, to the point of starvation. In that moment, I knew you were nothing like Jacob. So now I'm your responsibility? Your brother's discarded girlfriend and your niece? The words came out sharper than I intended. You're not my responsibility, Lily. He turned to face me fully now. You're a woman who deserves a chance to build a life for yourself and your daughter without working yourself to death. The job offer is genuine, you're qualified, and I need someone I can trust. Trust. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. You barely know me. I know enough. His eyes held mine. You're loyal, hardworking, and you love your daughter more than yourself. Those are rare qualities in my world. A gust of wind caught the shawl around my shoulders, and I shivered. Without hesitation, Dante removed his suit jacket and draped it over me. The fabric was warm from his body, carrying that scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. So, where do we go from here? I asked, wrapping the jacket tighter around me. You and Mia move into the apartment I've prepared. You start work on Monday. We establish a routine, a normal life, as normal as possible given the circumstances. He leaned against the railing, studying my face, and I get to know my niece. There it was, the heart of the matter. Mia, his blood, his family. I was just the gateway to her. And what happens when she gets older? I asked. Will you tell her what you do? Introduce her to your criminal empire? His jaw tightened. My business interests are more complex than you understand. I understand enough to know I don't want my daughter growing up around violence and illegal activities. Is that what you think her life with me would be? Guns and gangsters. He shook his head. I'm not the character from a movie, Lily. I have legitimate businesses, charity foundations, political connections. Mia would see that side of my life, the respectable side. She would want for nothing, except a father who can walk down the street without bodyguards, I said quietly. Pain flickered across his face, so brief I almost missed it. Jacob made his choice. He won't be coming back to claim his place in her life. The finality in his voice sent a chill through me. I had known, intellectually, that Jake was dead, but hearing the certainty in Dante's voice made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Did you... I couldn't finish the question. Dante's eyes were unreadable. Let's just say justice was served. I looked away, out at the city lights, trying to process everything. Jacob, was gone. He had betrayed both Dante and me, leaving behind a tangled web of consequences that now ensnared me and Mia. And Dante, this powerful, dangerous man, was offering us safety, security, and a place in his world. I won't lie to you, he said, breaking into my thoughts. My world can be dangerous, but I protect what's mine, and I do it better than anyone. No harm would come to either of you while I draw breath. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver through my body. One that had nothing to do with fear. I need time, I said. To think. To adjust to all of this. He nodded, unsurprised. Of course. But don't take too long. The apartment is ready, and the position needs to be filled. He checked his watch. It's getting late. I should take you back to your suite. As we walked back through the penthouse, I became acutely aware of the silence, of the staff that had melted away, leaving us alone. Dante moved with a predator's grace beside me, and I found myself wondering what it would be like to be truly his. Not just an employee or his niece's mother, but something more. The thought shocked me. It was too soon after Jake, too complicated, too dangerous. And yet, I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward this man who had saved us, who offered protection and truth when I'd had nothing but lies and struggle. We reached the door to my suite, and I shrugged off his jacket, handing it back to him. Our fingers brushed in the exchange, and the contact sent electricity up my arm. Thank you for dinner, I said, trying to sound normal despite the chaos in my mind. And for the truth. He draped the jacket over his arm, his eyes never leaving mine. I'll have Elena bring the paperwork for the apartment and job tomorrow. Take the day to read it, consider it. If you accept, you can move in this weekend. I nodded, my hand on the doorknob. Good night, Dante. A flash of surprise crossed his face at the use of his first name, followed by something warmer. Good night, Lily. He reached out, his fingers hovering near my cheek as if he might touch me. then dropped his hand. Sleep well. I slipped inside the suite, closing the door behind me. Elena looked up from where she sat reading beside Mia's crib. "Everything all right?" she asked, noting my flushed cheeks. "Fine," I said, moving to check on Mia. "Everything's fine." But as I watched my daughter sleep, her tiny face so peaceful, I wondered if anything would ever be truly fine again. We were stepping into a new world, Dante's world, with all its protection and its dangers. A world where milk receipts changed destinies and crime bosses offered second chances. A world where I was starting to feel things from my daughter's uncle that I had no business feeling at all. The next morning, I woke to Mia's soft babbling. She was sitting up in her crib, playing with a stuffed bear that had appeared sometime during our stay. Another gift from her uncle, no doubt. I watched her for a moment, her innocent joy untouched by the complications that swirled around her tiny existence. "What are we going to do, little one?" I whispered, lifting her into my arms. She smiled up at me, reaching for my face with perfect trust. In that moment, I knew my decision was already made. Whatever it took to give her stability, security, a future, I would do it, even if it meant entering Dante Rossi's world. Elena arrived an hour later with breakfast and a sleek leather portfolio. "The contracts," she said, placing it on the coffee table. "Mr. Rossi says to take your time reviewing them. There's also information about the apartment and the job description." I nodded, bouncing Mia on my hip. "Will he be coming by today?" "He had to leave the city on business," Elena said, arranging the breakfast dishes. "He'll return tomorrow evening and expects your answer then." Business. I wondered what that entailed for a man like Dante, then decided I was better off not knowing. After Elena left, I settled on the couch with the portfolio while Mia played on a blanket beside me. The employment contract was surprisingly straightforward: a generous salary, health benefits, retirement plan, flexible hours to accommodate childcare. Nothing hidden in the fine print, no clauses binding me to anything beyond standard executive assistant duties. The apartment lease was equally clean. 3 bedrooms in a luxury building downtown. Utilities included, no rent specified. A gift, not a loan. The school district information showed top-rated institutions from preschool through high school. It was all too perfect, too generous. There had to be a catch, something I was missing. And yet, as I flipped through the building brochure, with its pictures of the rooftop garden and children's playroom, I couldn't help imagining Mia growing up there. Safe, comfortable, with opportunities I could never have provided on my own. I spent the day alternating between caring for Mia and rereading the contracts, searching for hidden meanings or traps. By evening, I had to admit there were none, or at least, none on paper. The real complications lay in the unwritten agreement, accepting Dante Rossi into our lives, acknowledging him as Mia's uncle and protector, navigating the dangerous waters of his world. That night, I dreamed of Dante, not as the powerful crime boss, but as a man, his hands gentle on my skin, his voice soft in my ear, his body pressing mine into silk sheets. I woke gasping, tangled in the bed covers, my heart racing and my cheeks burning with shame. He was Jake's brother, my daughter's uncle, my potential employer. The last thing I should be doing was dreaming of him that way. But as I lay in the darkness, listening to Mia's soft breathing from her crib, I couldn't deny the attraction I felt toward him. It wasn't just gratitude or the security he offered. There was something about Dante himself. His intensity, his honor-bound approach to family, the glimpses of vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior. The next day dragged endlessly as I waited for his return. Elena brought meals, checked on Mia, but offered no information about when Dante might arrive. I found myself repeatedly smoothing my hair, glancing at the door, ridiculous behaviors I hadn't exhibited since high school. Finally, as the city lights began to twinkle outside the windows, a knock came at the door. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and opened it. Dante stood there, still in his traveling clothes, dark jeans and a black cashmere sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. His eyes moved over my face, searching. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, suddenly aware of my simple leggings and oversized sweater. Practical clothes for caring for a baby, but hardly impressive. He entered, his presence immediately filling the room. His gaze landed on Mia, who was sitting in her bouncer, and softened visibly. "She's grown," Even in these few days, he said, moving toward her. Babies do that, I replied, watching as he crouched beside the bouncer. Mia looked up at him curiously, then offered a gummy smile. She's not afraid of me, he murmured, almost to himself. Should she be? I asked quietly. He looked up, his eyes serious. Many people are, but never her. Never you. He straightened, turning to face me fully. Have you made your decision? I nodded, suddenly nervous despite having rehearsed this conversation in my mind all day. I'll take the job. And the apartment. Relief flickered across his features, quickly masked. Good. We can move you in tomorrow. There are conditions, I said, lifting my chin. A hint of amusement touched his mouth. I thought there might be. I want to keep my relationship with you professional at the office. No one should know I'm living in your building or that Mia is your niece. I don't want special treatment or rumors. He considered this, then nodded. Reasonable. What else? I want your promise that you'll never involve Mia in anything illegal. Ever. No matter how old she gets, no matter what happens, she stays clean. His expression hardened slightly. Do you think I would corrupt my own niece? I don't know you well enough to know what you would or wouldn't do, I said honestly. I'm just making my boundaries clear. He studied me for a long moment, then gave a short nod. Agreed. Mia will never be involved in any illegal activities. She'll have every legitimate opportunity I can provide. I took a deep breath, preparing for the last and most difficult condition. And finally, our relationship stays strictly professional. No complications. His eyebrows rose slightly. Complications. Heat crept into my cheeks. You know what I mean? No romantic entanglement. It would be too messy. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment? Amusement? Challenge? I couldn't tell. If that's what you want, he said finally, his voice neutral. It's what's best, I insisted, as much to myself as to him. For Mia, for the job, for everything. He inclined his head in acknowledgement, though I had the unsettling feeling he was simply allowing me this illusion of control. Then we have a deal. Be ready at 9 tomorrow. I'll send a car. As he turned to leave, his hand brushed mine, the contact brief but electric. He paused, looking down at our hands, then back to my face. Professional, he repeated, a hint of something dangerous in his smile. As you wish, Lily. He glanced back at Mia one more time, his expression softening, then left the suite, closing the door quietly behind him. I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. What had I gotten myself into? The next morning was a whirlwind of activity. Elena helped me pack the few belongings we had, while another of Dante's staff prepared Mia for the move. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows arrived precisely at 9, the driver silent and efficient as he loaded our things. Mr. Rossi asked me to give you this, Elena said, handing me an envelope as we prepared to leave. Inside was a credit card in my name and a note in strong, angular handwriting for anything Mia needs, or you. D. The apartment exceeded even the glossy pictures in the brochure. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating hardwood floors and custom fixtures. Mia's room had been fully furnished with an elegant crib and changing table, stuffed animals arranged on shelves, a rocking chair in the corner. My bedroom was equally impressive. A king-sized bed with silk sheets, a walk-in closet already containing new clothes in my size, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. The third bedroom had been set up as a home office, with a state-of-the-art computer and comfortable workspace. On the desk lay a new phone and another note. Secure line. My number is programmed in. Call if you need anything. D. I wandered through the apartment in a daze, Mia in my arms, trying to reconcile this luxury with the freezing one-room apartment we'd left behind just a week ago. It felt like a dream, or a movie, the kind where the poor girl gets swept away by a rich man and lives happily ever after. Except this rich man was a crime boss, and I'd explicitly ruled out any romantic involvement. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. I opened it to find a young woman with a warm smile and professional attire. Ms. Harrison? I'm Sophie, the nanny Mr. Rossi arranged. I'm here to help you settle in and discuss Mia's schedule. Nanny, I repeated, confused. I didn't agree to a nanny. Sophie looked momentarily flustered. Mr. Rossi said you'd be starting work on Monday and would need childcare. I can come daily or live in, whichever you prefer. Another decision made for me. I swallowed my irritation and invited her in, reminding myself that I would, indeed, need childcare once I started work, and at least this way I could interview her myself, make sure she was someone I trusted with Mia. Sophie turned out to be lovely, experienced, gentle with Mia, and happy to work on a daily basis rather than live in. By the time she left, promising to return on Monday morning, I felt more at ease with the arrangement. That evening, as I was putting Mia down to sleep in her new crib, my phone rang. The new one Dante had provided. His name flashed on the screen. "Is the apartment satisfactory?" he asked when I answered, his voice low and intimate in my ear. "It's beautiful," I admitted, moving out of Mia's room and closing the door softly. "Thank you. And Sophie? Will she work out?" I leaned against the hallway wall, torn between gratitude and frustration. "She seems perfect, but I would have preferred to be consulted before you hired a nanny." A pause. "You're right. I overstepped. It won't happen again." His admission surprised me. "Thank you for acknowledging that. I'm learning," he said, an unexpected vulnerability in his voice. "This arrangement. It's new territory for me too." The thought of the powerful Dante Rossi navigating unfamiliar ground was strangely comforting. Perhaps we were more evenly matched than I'd assumed. "Are you ready for Monday?" he asked, changing the subject. "I think so. Nervous, but ready." "Don't be nervous. You'll be working directly with me, not interacting much with others at first." Working directly with him, the thought sent an inappropriate thrill through me, which I firmly squashed. "Professional," I reminded myself silently. "I should go," I said. "It's been a long day." "Of course." He paused. "Good night, Lily." "Good night, Dante." I ended the call and stood there for a moment, phone clutched in my hand, trying to ignore the warmth that spread through me at the sound of my name on his lips. Professional. That was what I'd asked for, what I'd insisted on. But as I prepared for bed in my new luxury apartment, provided by a man whose very existence endangered and protected me in equal measure, I wondered how long that resolution would last. Monday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread churning in my stomach. I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back. Gone was the exhausted, hollow-cheeked mother in threadbare clothes. In her place stood someone polished, professional, wearing a sleek black dress from the collection that had mysteriously appeared in my closet. My hair, washed with expensive shampoo and styled with tools I'd never owned before, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. Sophie arrived promptly at 7, cooing over Mia and shooing me toward the door with assurances that everything would be fine. I kissed Mia goodbye, inhaling her baby scent for courage, and headed downstairs where a car waited to take me to Rossi Developments. The building was an imposing glass and steel structure in the heart of downtown. The company logo, an elegant stylized R mounted in chrome above the entrance. The security guard nodded respectfully as I approached. "Ms. Harrison, Mr. Rossi is expecting you. 18th floor." The elevator whisked me upward, my stomach lurching with more than just the rapid ascent. What had seemed like a practical decision in the safety of my new apartment now felt reckless. I was walking directly into the lion's den, placing myself under Dante's authority not just personally but professionally as well. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area decorated in understated luxury. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, fresh flowers on the glass reception desk. A woman in her 40s looked up and smiled. "Ms. Harrison, welcome to Rossi Developments," she stood, extending her hand. "I'm Margaret, Mr. Rossi's office manager. He asked me to show you around before taking you to your desk." I followed her through the office, trying to absorb everything as she pointed out departments and introduced key personnel. Everyone was polite but curious, clearly wondering who I was and why I was being given the VIP tour. No one mentioned any relationship to Dante beyond my new role as his executive assistant, which confirmed he was keeping his word about discretion. Finally, Margaret led me to a spacious office adjacent to an even larger one with frosted glass doors. "This is your space," she said, gesturing to a sleek desk with state-of-the-art computer equipment. "Mr. Rossi's office is through there. You'll be handling his schedule, correspondence, and special projects. I've prepared a manual with all the protocols and passwords you'll need." She handed me a leather-bound folder. "He's in a meeting now, but wanted to see you when he returns. Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee?" "Coffee would be wonderful," I said, setting my purse down and trying to look as though I belonged in this rarefied environment. After Margaret left, I explored my new workspace, running my fingers over the smooth desktop, testing the ergonomic chair. The view from the windows was spectacular, the city spread out below like a living map. On the desk sat a framed photograph I hadn't noticed at first. Mia, smiling in her bouncer, a picture I hadn't taken. Dante must have had it done professionally. The gesture was both touching and unsettling. "It suits you." I turned to find Dante standing in the doorway of his office, watching me with those intense dark eyes. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, his presence commanding even in stillness. "The office," he clarified, stepping further into the room. "You look like you belong here." "Thank you," I said, acutely aware of Margaret returning with my coffee, her eyes darting between us with barely concealed curiosity. "Margaret, please reschedule my 11 o'clock. I need to brief Ms. Harrison on the West Side project." His tone was pleasant, but brooked no argument. "Of course, Mr. Rossi." She set down my coffee and retreated, closing the door behind her. As soon as we were alone, Dante's posture relaxed slightly. He moved to lean against my desk, closer than was strictly professional, but not inappropriately so. "How is Mia settling in?" he asked, his voice softening at his niece's name. "Well, I think. She slept through the night for the first time in months." I smiled despite my nervousness. "The nanny seems good with her. Sophie comes highly recommended." "She's worked for several of my associates with young children." He studied my face. "And how are you settling in?" I took a breath, determined to establish a professional tone. "It's all a bit overwhelming, but I'm adapting. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Rossi." A flicker of amusement crossed his features at the formal address. "Mr. Rossi is fine for the office. Now let me show you what you'll be working on." The rest of the morning passed in a whirlwind of information: projects, clients, filing systems, security protocols. Dante was a thorough but patient instructor, and I found myself genuinely interested in the work. Rossi Developments, it turned out, was involved in several community revitalization projects, turning abandoned buildings into affordable housing and community centers. "This isn't what I expected," I admitted, as we reviewed plans for a shelter for abused women and children. Dante's expression was unreadable. "What did you expect? Drug money laundering and criminal enterprises?" I flushed. "Something like that, yes." He leaned back in his chair, watching me. "My other businesses are kept separate from this one. Rossi Developments is entirely legitimate, with real positive impacts on the community. The work you do here will be something you can be proud of." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. "Thank you," I said softly. "That matters to me." Our eyes held for a moment too long, and I looked away first, focusing on the papers before me. "So, about these zoning permits." The week fell into a pattern. I arrived at work by 8, diving into Dante's complicated schedule and the myriad details of his legitimate business empire. He was, I discovered, a demanding but fair boss, expecting excellence but quick to acknowledge good work. We maintained a professional distance at the office, though I felt his eyes on me more often than not, especially when he thought I wasn't looking. In the evenings, I returned home to Mia, relieved to find her thriving under Sophie's care. We settled into a routine: bath time, stories, cuddles before bed. I'd sit in the rocking chair in her room, watching her sleep, marveling at how much our lives had changed in such a short time. Sometimes my phone would ring after Mia was asleep. Dante, checking in, asking about my day, about Mia. Our conversations were brief, proper, but I found myself looking forward to them, to the rare moments when his careful control would slip, and I'd hear genuine warmth in his voice. By Friday evening, I was exhausted, but strangely satisfied. I had just put Mia to bed when a knock came at the door. I opened it to find Dante standing there, his tie loosened, a bottle of wine in one hand. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, his eyes moving over my face, taking in my comfortable leggings and oversized sweater. "I thought we should celebrate your first week." I hesitated, then stepped back to let him in. "Mia just went down for the night. I won't stay long." He moved to the kitchen, familiar with the layout, and began opening drawers until he found a corkscrew. "You did well this week. The Henderson contract especially. You caught details my legal team missed." "Thank you." I watched as he opened the wine with practiced ease, pouring 2 glasses. "I'm enjoying the work more than I expected." He handed me a glass, careful not to let our fingers touch. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass slightly. "New beginnings," I echoed, taking a sip. The wine was exceptional, of course. Rich and complex. We moved to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence comfortable yet charged with unspoken awareness. "Why did you really come tonight?" I asked finally, setting my wine glass on the coffee table. Dante studied me, his expression thoughtful. "I told myself it was to check on Mia, to see how you're adjusting." He paused. "But the truth is, I wanted to see you outside the office, away from prying eyes and professional boundaries." My heart quickened. I thought we agreed to keep things professional. We did. His eyes never left mine. But agreements can be renegotiated when circumstances change. "What circumstances have changed?" I asked, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. He set his glass down, turning to face me more fully. "I find myself thinking about you. Not as Jacob's former partner, not as Mia's mother, not even as my employee, just as Lily." The admission hung between us, honest and dangerous. I should have redirected the conversation, reminded him of our agreement, maintained the boundaries I'd insisted upon. Instead, I found myself saying, "I think about you too." Something flickered in his eyes, triumph, relief, desire. He moved closer on the sofa, still not touching me, but near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "This is complicated," I whispered, even as I leaned toward him. "Everything worthwhile is." His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from my face, the contact sending electricity through me. "Tell me to leave, Lily, and I will. We'll return to our professional arrangement, and I won't cross this line again." I knew I should do exactly that, send him away, preserve the careful balance we'd established, protect myself from the inevitable complications of becoming involved with a man like Dante Rossi. But as I looked into his eyes, saw the vulnerability beneath the power, I couldn't form the words. Instead, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his. For a heartbeat, he remained still, as though giving me one last chance to change my mind. Then his control broke. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against him as he deepened the kiss. His mouth was demanding, possessive, yet somehow gentle, the same fascinating contradiction I'd observed in everything he did. I melted into him, weeks of tension and denied attraction culminating in this moment. My hands found their way to his shoulders, his chest, feeling the solid strength beneath expensive fabric. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you in that hospital bed," he admitted, his voice rough. Even when I looked half dead, I laughed softly. He pulled back slightly to look into my eyes. "You were beautiful, brave, a fighter." His thumb traced my lower lip. "You still are." The tenderness in his touch undid me. I had been alone for so long, carrying every burden by myself, to be seen, to be wanted, to be cared for. It overwhelmed my carefully constructed defenses. "Stay," I whispered, surprising myself with the boldness. "Stay tonight." His eyes darkened, desire warring with restraint. "Are you sure? Once this line is crossed, I'm sure." And I was. Whatever complications tomorrow would bring, tonight I wanted the comfort of his arms, the heat of his body, the temporary oblivion he offered. He stood, pulling me up with him, and led me toward the bedroom. At the doorway, he paused, cupping my face in his hands. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice low and intense. "I don't do casual, Lily. If we do this, if we start this, it means something to me. I searched his face, seeing nothing but sincerity. It means something to me too. His kiss was different this time. Deeper, more purposeful. He lifted me as though I weighed nothing, carrying me to the bed and laying me down with unexpected gentleness. As he loosened his tie and began unbuttoning his shirt, I was struck by the trust implicit in what we were doing. This man, who lived in a world of violence and power, was allowing himself to be vulnerable with me. What followed was nothing like my dream, yet somehow better. Dante was passionate but patient, his hands and mouth exploring every inch of me with reverent attention. He whispered Italian endearments against my skin, words I didn't understand, but whose meaning was clear in his touch. When we finally came together, it was with an intensity that left me breathless, clinging to him as though he were the only solid thing in a world turned liquid with pleasure. Afterward, he held me against his chest, his heartbeat strong and steady beneath my ear. His fingers traced idle patterns on my back, and I felt more peaceful than I had in months, perhaps years. "What happens now?" I murmured, not wanting to break the moment but needing to know where we stood. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "Now we sleep. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. That simple?" I smiled against his skin. "Nothing about this is simple, cara mia." His arms tightened around me. "But we'll make it work. I protect what's mine." The possessiveness should have alarmed me, but instead, it felt like a promise, a shelter in a world that had shown me little kindness until now. I fell asleep in his arms, more secure than I'd felt since childhood. The sound of Mia's crying woke me before dawn. I slipped from Dante's embrace, pulled on a robe, and padded to her room. She was standing in her crib, tears streaking her chubby cheeks, arms reaching for me. "Shh, baby girl," I murmured, lifting her up and rocking her gently. "Mama's here." I changed her diaper and settled into the rocking chair to feed her a bottle. As she drank, her eyes began to drift closed again. Her tiny hand curled around my finger. "You're good with her." I looked up to find Dante standing in the doorway, wearing only his pants from the night before. In the soft glow of the nightlight, the scars on his torso were visible, markers of a violent life I was only beginning to understand. "She makes it easy," I said softly. "She trusts completely." He moved into the room, crouching beside the chair to look at his niece's peaceful face. "She looks like my mother," he said, his voice barely audible. Around the eyes, I studied his face, seeing grief and something else. A longing so profound it made my chest ache. "Would you like to hold her?" Surprise flickered across his features, followed by uncertainty, an expression I'd never thought to see on his confident face. "I don't know how." "It's easy." I shifted Mia, who was now asleep, into his arms, showing him how to support her head, just like that. He held her with exquisite care, his powerful hands gentle as they cradled her tiny body. Something transformed in his face as he looked down at her, a softening, a vulnerability that made him look younger. "She's perfect," he whispered, and I saw him blink rapidly, emotion threatening to overwhelm his control. In that moment, watching this dangerous, powerful man hold my daughter with such tenderness, I realized that there was no going back. Dante Rossi had entered our lives, not just as a protector or provider, but as something more, a presence that would shape our future in ways I couldn't yet imagine. 6 months later, I stood at the window of our new home, a secluded estate outside the city, with gardens for Mia to play in, and security systems that made it a virtual fortress. Dante had insisted on the move after an incident at Rossi Developments, where a rival organization had attempted to gain access to the building. No one had been hurt, but the threat had been enough to convince me that more protection was necessary. Mia, now a year old, sat on a blanket on the lawn, giggling as Dante helped her stack blocks. He came to the gardens every evening when he returned home, spending time with his niece before dinner. She adored him, reaching for him with excited squeals whenever he entered a room. As I watched them together, I felt a contentment I never thought possible. Our relationship had evolved, deepened beyond what I'd imagined that first night. Dante was still the powerful, dangerous man who commanded an empire from the shadows, but he was also the man who read bedtime stories to Mia, who brought me coffee in bed each morning, who listened to my ideas for Rossi Development's community projects with genuine respect. The road hadn't been smooth. There had been adjustments, arguments, moments when our world seemed too different to reconcile. But through it all, one truth remained constant. Dante Rossi kept his promises. He had protected us, provided for us, and kept his criminal activities entirely separate from our home life. And he had loved us, in his own intense, all-encompassing way. I stepped outside, moving across the lawn toward my family. Dante looked up, his face transforming with the smile he reserved only for us. Mia followed his gaze and beamed, holding up her arms for me. "Mama!" I scooped her up, pressing a kiss to her curls, then leaned down to kiss Dante as well. His hand came up to cup my face, his eyes warm as they met mine. "Happy?" he asked softly, the question he posed each evening, as though checking a vital sign. "Happy," I confirmed, and meant it. Life with Dante Rossi wasn't what I'd ever imagined for myself. It came with complications, compromises, and occasional fear. But it also brought security, passion, and a love so fierce it sometimes took my breath away, all because of a milk receipt found by the right man at the right moment. All because I had chosen to put my daughter first, even when I had nothing left to give. All because Dante Rossi, for all his power and danger, had the capacity to recognize sacrifice, to honor loyalty, and to love with the same intensity with which he did everything else in his life. And in that love, Mia and I had found our home.